is a low magnification. And when I say low, it's 40x. Okay. And your scope can do 40, it can do 100, and it can do 400. And those are the only three I expect you to do. See this splotch here? Is this the thyroid or the parathyroid?
Parathyroid.
That's the parathyroid. You got a lot of blood vessels here. But these are very large follicles, and these are smaller follicles. Okay. Take a picture of that. Let me get my mouse and mouse ready. So look at the follicle arrangement. We got to go to like 100, 400 to get a better view. So let's do that. To see cells, you got to go to 400. So here's 100. Here's what that looks like. You can start to see the cuboidal cells around the follicle. There's a very large follicle. But what's in the middle there? Colloid. Okay, so let's go to 400. So this is 400x. You can see that there's some space between the colloid and the follicle cells around it. This whole thing's a follicle. That's the colloid. You see the C cells. You just have to know where to look for them between the follicles. Okay, those C cells are probably like that. Now, they're called C cells. The C doesn't stand for calcitonin. It stands for clear because they have clear cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm, like of this one, is like a little lighter than some of the follicle cells of the follicles. This is okay. Let me see if I can find that. I don't know. I don't want to mount too much. It's too much. Oh, that one's really clear. I don't see any cytoplasm at all. I'll just take a picture of this. It's all looking the same to me on this slide. Good enough. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. Pituitary. Any questions? Yeah.
Can you point it out again? Where's the C cell?
Okay, on this one, I see one there. Also on this image, just looking around. Because usually when I ask you to find it, they don't look that clear. Okay. Let me find one more place to take a picture besides this one. I think that first place I had it was not bad either. This one's pretty good. See this couple cells here? That's kind of obvious to me. Usually, if you just look between the follicles and you see a clump of cells between follicles, that's it. That would give you credit for it. Okay. These are good candidates. These are probably C cells. I'm not even sure myself. I know what these are. Okay, sometimes it's a judgment call for you and for me. But I'm going to take a picture of this too, and I think we can move on. If there's no further questions, give you a chance to make sure you understand before I move on. I'm taking pictures for you. So technically, this is your lab time. I'm basically doing a lot for you. Saving a lot of time.
Thank you.
Good, well. So if I scan from bottom to top like that, so you have a darker tissue than this area here, and the tissues kind of separate. So I try to get all three in the picture. If you remember what I said this morning, which one stains the darkest? Anterior and pituitary. Which one had the intermediate stain and is also in the middle?
Pars
intermedia. And then the
posterior
pituitary had the light stain. Now the other thing you have to know is the pituitary stalk of the infundibulum. Usually you have to hunt around for that. So usually what I do is I look, okay, there's the whole posterior low part. Then I look at the side of it. That's usually where it hides. Usually that little nub right there on the top. Okay, see that there? That's a piece of what the stalk should have been. It should be continuous with the anterior, with the posterior lobe down there. Let me do it one more time. And here's the stalk down, the posterior lobe down there. The infundibulum is hiding up here, this little piece. Okay, so let me take a picture of that. Okay, and that's the hypothesis. Move on, that's all you have to do. Any questions on hypothesis? For the pancreas, we study the pancreas and endocrine because they feed insulin and glucagon, things that regulate blood sugar. Now, most of the pancreas is exocrine function, but the very small part of it that makes endocrine hormones are the pancreatic islets. That's the only thing I list on your study guide. And this is probably one of the more difficult ones to find. What you want to find is a clump of cells. What you don't want to find, which is a common mistake, is to identify little ducts or blood vessels. Okay. Now, a duct in a blood vessel has a space, a lumen, but a clump of cells would not. Then, as you look at the pancreas under a low magnification, even under a low magnification, I see little clumps of cells like all over the place. Like for example, bam, bam, bam. And I'm not sure these are the islets. I'll have to get at a higher magnification. Like if I see something with a lumen, that's probably a blood vessel. So I stay away from that. So let's look at a islet up close. Oh, there's some nice ones here. Let me put it higher on the screen. These right here. Those little cells secrete insulin and glucagon. Oops, overexposed. Take a picture of this. We can white it out. It's a little yellow. We'll let this out. Now it's all blue. thyroid magnification out. If you see something with a lumen, is that what you're looking for?
No.
No. That's what you're looking for, that clump of cells. So I'll get a picture of that one for you. See if I can find another one. Well, we are pretty good. So usually what I do is I start on low mag so I can scan around more. I see a big one on the bottom. See these big two? There's 3 or 4 of them there. Let me try to get one of those in the high mag. Pretty good. Okay, I'll take a picture of those two. So do you see two?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, many of you seem confident. You can show me everything but this when it's your turn to show me. You have to have some discipline in your knowledge. You can't just show anything that stands out. You have to know that it's these clumps of cells that we're looking for here. These are have the endocrine functions. So I want to move on. Adrenal gland. This is our stress organ. So a little background here. When you cut the whole adrenal gland, I drew this on the board the last time. I had to say cortex medulla, like that. What is the outer part called? Cortex or medulla?
Cortex.
Adrenal cortex. You know, there's 3 zones. The outermost zone, if I can kind of divide it into zones, all the way around. I'll just put G. You should have listed in your study guide what zone G is. What's the full name? Zona glomerulus. And it's G all the way around, all the way to the outer part. Okay. That zone secretes aldosterone. That's why we're studying it. Just remember the word salt. Because what does it do? It facilitates sodium reabsorption from the kidney. Okay. There's a middle zone, it's kind of the biggest zone. Zona fasciculata. Yeah, that should be on your study guide. I'll just put F up here. It's on your study guide. Fasciculata. That zone secretes the cortisol. Talk more about cortisol later. It basically regulates blood sugar in the stress response. It helps keep blood sugar up so you have some sugar for your brain. So just remember sugar. The innermost zone of the cortex, I'm putting the letter R, zona reticularis, secretes the sex hormones. Okay. Well, you know, testosterone, androgens, basically. So just remember the word sex. So from outer to inner, you have salt, sugar, sex. For those three zones, zona glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis. The inner part is the medulla. The adrenal medulla secrete catecholamines, which we noted on Monday. So what I usually do to teach this, I try to find the border between the cortex and the medulla. And then I look for white space. Because if you can see white space, then you can see this border. You should be able to identify everything on this gland. So I try to, this is medulla here, and right there is like the border between cortex and medulla. There's my capsule around the Now look at my laser pointer, here's what I see. I see kind of white space here. This is capsule stuff. You don't have to worry about the capsule, fibrous capsule surrounding the gland. But from here to here, sorry about that dark spot, here to here it is cortex. So you see that? That's all medulla. There's a blood vessel inside the medulla. Okay. So right here is the border between the cortex and the medulla. This is a decent enough picture to take, even though there's a little dark spot there. We don't have the best adrenal slides. This is kind of typical of what you may grab from the tray. So if you had to identify the zones, let me go to a hard magnification. This is 100x. So how I orient myself is, okay, there's my white space, so I know that's the capsule. See these clumps of cells are kind of ovally looking? If it's the outermost zone, which one is it?
Aldosterone.
Glomerulosa. Now, to orient yourself, this is the medulla down here. What if I point to somewhere in the middle?
The F1.
The cells are kind of arranged in vertical cords. Kind of. That's zona fasciculata. It's hard to see on this picture. When you look at the scope, it looks much better. This down here is reticularis. I can tell, but it's the innermost zone. If you can't tell, it looks all the same to me. You just have to know. If I'm pointing by geography, I'm pointing out there, I'm pointing in the middle, or I'm pointing right there. If it's glomerulosa reticularis, glomerulosa fasciculata reticularis, then the adrenal medulla down here. I'll take a picture of this. I'll see if I can find a better spot in the slide. All right. Actually, I'm going to get a better slide, actually. This looks kind of frustrating. By the way, I wrote the locations of where you can find these slides in our boxes. You can see there's 3 white boxes. The A is the box. It's either box A, B, or C. The number refers to the tray number, trays 1 through 12 in the box. The L refers to, or the R refers to left or right on the tray. So you can find it and put it back in the right place. Appreciate your cooperation. Nope, I'm over to this one kind of bites. I don't like it. about as good as we're going to get for our collection. We don't have the best collection, but it's good enough. Is this cortex or medulla? This is cortex. Which zone is that?
Reticularis.
Reticularis. What about that one?
Fasciculata.
Fasciculata. These little oval clumps on the top. Glomerulosa. Okay. So what's that?
Adrenal medulla.
Adrenal medulla. So you guys, at least some of you can see it, and some of you may take a little more time. But that's all I wanted to do for the adrenal gland. Just do the histology today. 2 more slides. Ovary. This is cat ovary. It's the best thing to look at. Why do we study this? They secrete estrogens, the sex hormones, the ovaries do. So we have to understand there's follicles in the ovary, there's follicles in the thyroid. The eggs don't hang out by themselves. They live in follicles. The follicles develop before a female is born, in the 7th month of pregnancy. Once you form the follicles, you can't have any more proliferation of the eggs because you can't have mitosis with a follicle around the egg. So I want you to identify the different stages of follicular development because it's the follicles that will secrete, the big follicles will secrete the sex hormones. Okay? We'll talk about that way more in a future lecture. But just for now, just to identify how do the follicles develop? Well, when you're born, you got like maybe 1 million of them, but they're really small. They're called primordial follicles. Okay, so I'll draw a little circle. I'm not going to try to draw the details. I'm going to show you the real thing right here. Okay, they're small follicles with an egg inside, really small. And you want to look for them at the cortex of the ovary. They're at the edge. Now, when a female becomes sexually mature, the gonadotropins, FSH, LH, they start to stimulate the follicle cells around it. Okay? And so, primary follicles, they're all called follicles, by the way. Maybe a primordial follicle, just to give you some more detail. Maybe they have like simple squamous cells around it, which are really small. Maybe a primary follicle is a little bigger, maybe has 1 layer of cuboidal cells around it. But both of these cells, they're not secreting anything. Okay, maybe my 8-year-old daughter has these, but they're not secreting estrogen yet. We're not at puberty yet. Okay, so these are quiescent. There's no estrogens coming from these. Yeah, it's the bigger ones. When you reach puberty, you get enough gonadotropin to stimulate the follicles. FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. It's making these grow. And so secondary follicles and Graafian follicles are well, the Graafian, we say it's the mature follicle. It's ready to ovulate. They're just huge, okay? So these two, look for them at the edge. What happens is, the more mature ones that are selected for an ovarian cycle to undergo, to reach secondary grafting, they're pushed more towards the middle. Okay, so that big stuff in the middle, those are the bigger follicles. Okay, so it's kind of difficult to explain the difference between a secondary and grafting. It's easier if I just show you. But this is what you're looking for. And why we study it is because the big follicles secrete estrogen. This is cat, it's not human. Cat is a good one to study because it has all stages of follicular development. Okay? Humans, you can't see anything. Okay? For cats, when cats give birth, is it like one little kitten? It's a whole bunch, right? So they got all kinds of stuff going on, they got all kinds of ovulations. So in your ovary, you expect to see a lot more stages of development. Good to use. See all these little circles at the edge? So what are those? relatively small and you're at the edge. So 100. 50. A little better. This is a good view. I see all 4 stages of development in one shot. Okay. This is the biggest one. So what is it?
I'm not sure. Graphene.
The Graphian one. You see like how it has that kind of moon-shaped antrum? This space in the follicle is called the antrum. It's just fluid filling. They can provide some nutrition for the egg. This is the egg. With haploid DNA, it means it has half the DNA. Where's the other half come from? The follicle. Yeah, from the sperm. And there's some connective tissue around there, and we'll talk about the details of it later. This is Graphian. Okay. Let's see. Well, that's kind of Graphian, kind of secondary. That's more graph. It's not really secondary. I don't think there's a good secondary on here, but we got Graphian. This is a perfect example. I don't know if you can see it in the back. Well, let me raise it up so you can see it better. Let me take a picture of this before we do that. Just for size comparison, you see that? That's primary. One layer of cuboidal cells around it. See next to that? Those are primordial. Primary. There's a primary. That's primary. Okay, let me take a picture of this. Secondary is this one here. There's the egg. There's little bits of antrum. This is becoming Graphian. And you have a much bigger shape. See that moon-shaped antrum down here versus that? I consider that a good secondary. Now this is on its way to being Graphian. What would you consider this? Secondary. Now the difference between primary and secondary is, if you look closely, it's probably hard to see this resolution. There's stratification. What does stratification mean? Many layers. Many layers of cells. So that's primary, 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 primary. What is this again? Primordial. What is this?
Secondary.
Secondary, okay. And this is becoming Graphian.
Becoming graphene.
Let's move on. Testes. From rat. We study testes because, well, what's the sex hormone during this disease?
Testosterone.
Testosterone.
Did you show us the Becca folliculi on the ovary?
Oh. No, I didn't. I forgot that was there. Yeah, you need to know that that's important.
Just go back to the
So let me go back to that. Thanks for catching that. Look for those on a big follicle like a Graphian. That doesn't see that I can see it. Is granulosa cells on the study guide for ovary? Or is it just theca? Okay, theca, we'll just do that then. Well, this one's pretty good to look at, theca. Theca actually secretes the androgen, the hormone that's converted to estrogen. So that's why I wanted you to note it. It's that fibrous tissue right there. Let me put it under high mag. It's a fibrous looking tissue. This is 400X. Let me do the area white balance thing. So what we're looking at here, that's the egg, that's the oocyte. These cells right here are granulosa cells. They help produce the estrogen as well. But see these fibrous cells around it? That's theca. Okay, this actually produces the sex hormone. And we'll talk more about it later when we get to the throat. So point on the outside there. Hopefully that's clear enough. Remember, these are just still shots. It helps to learn if you look at it under multiple magnifications. Maybe lower is helpful as well. So the theca is right there. Those are the granulosa cells. Okay, I'll talk more about that later. So the theca, now let's do rat testes. Any more questions? So I have interstitial cells. Do I have seminiferous tubules on there?
Yes.
Okay. One produces sperm, one produces testosterone, which is why we're studying it here. Do you see a bunch of cut tubes? That's a cut tube. That's a cut tube. These are all cut tubes with a lumen. Squiggly little things inside are probably sperm. Radical sperm. These are the testes. Okay. Now, to give you some background on this, like that's testes. They're just little marble-sized, grape-sized circle gonads, right?